Talking about something called mirror work, which would be similar to like psychomantiums and that idea.
Yes.
Um, were these methods part of our culture going way back and maybe starting in Atlantean times,
Yes.
or?
It began in Atlantean times and progressed through Egyptian times and spread out to many other cultures in the early days of your civilizations. Yes.
And what is the benefit of working with those kinds of tools?
Well, again, like any permission slip, it taps into certain things where people have certain sensitivities to recognize that the idea of reflection, which is what a mirror symbolizes, puts you in touch with not only different aspects of your own consciousness, if you're willing to reflect on them and look with honesty in the reflections in mirrors to see your true self, but also can allow you to look beyond the physical realm as if the mirror is actually a window into the spirit world. Because it can function that way for certain aspects of your consciousness as well, and allow ease of communication with spirits.
So is there something with the subconscious mind that allows it to use it, and it gets the conscious mind out of the way in a sense?
Yes. The sub and unconscious minds, which are higher versions closer to the idea of the higher mind. And therefore, yes, getting the conscious mind to relax and allow yourself to see through the looking glass, so to speak, as opposed to just seeing your own physical reflection, is what will allow it to sort of turn into a window into the higher mind realm, which is the realm of spirit, and thus make more ease of communication with spirits, if used that way, in the way it is described to be used, in the darkness with a dim light, not seeing anything in the mirror other than a blank canvas, so to speak, like a wall. Thus then getting your analytical mind to relax itself, because there's nothing in the mirror to analyze except existence itself, presence itself. And so it becomes a window rather than a reflector.
You know, you once mentioned that that your existence is very similar to being in a lucid dream.
Yes.
For us.
Yes.
Okay. And that one of the keystone aspects of that is that you can see the symbols for what they are.
Yes.
As opposed to us, the symbols we see, and also because of our training, we think of them as solid. We think they mean one thing.
Yes.
Like a chair, or whereas if you were to see a chair,
yes,
what might that symbol represent?
A sensation of relaxed support.
So that's part of the evolution of consciousness also, is that we start to be able to see through the symbols that are presented to us.
And of course, they will change depending upon the circumstance and the situation. Again, similar to the idea of the permission slip you know as the tarot cards, because even though there may seem to be a so-called quote-unquote fixed image on the card, there are many different attributes to that image, many different kinds of objects that are represented in any one of those cards. And for someone who is sensitive to that particular permission slip and can allow themselves to read them, different symbols at different time, depending upon the interaction of different people, will stand out to the reader in different ways than they have before, letting them know which aspect of the overall image is the most important to look at and what meaning that may bring with it relevant for the person they are reading for. So even a chair can represent different things. It can represent the concept of relaxed support. It can represent the concept of paying attention by staying in one spot and being educated by something, just as you have your own chairs and desks in school. It can represent many different kinds of things, depending on how many legs it has, how many backs it has, if it has any back at all. So again, even the symbol of the chair can shift according to what's going on at any given moment in anyone's consciousness that is choosing to use that symbol to represent the state of being they happen to be in at that moment.
And there's been questions about how you can achieve the same kind of effect without having to take a psychedelic or
Yes.
a plant medicine. And it seems like it's also connected with the idea of being able to see through symbols when
Yes.
you are in these altered states.
Yes.
Is there other ways of attaining those states of consciousness?
Of course. Of course. There are many different permission slips. The idea of channeling is one of them. Being in the channeling state in the brain allows for these kinds of perceptions.
Okay, and then even some of the things like drumming and
dancing, drumming.
meditation.
There are many different kinds, meditation, many different kinds of permission slips that generate certain states that will allow for these kinds of perceptions to seem more obvious and natural.
And whereas in a plant-based medicine experience, it may go on and on for hours.
Yes.
You can actually achieve the same thing simply by getting a download when you're in an altered state that you generate naturally.
Yes, of course.
And then it unspools within you so that you have recognition of the information you're receiving.
It unspools according to the time frame and the timing that is relevant for the person that has received the download, yes.
I see. Can all kinds of cats, including tigers and lions, can they see interdimensionals? I mean, and elementals and...
Yes, they don't always do it, but they all have the capacity, yes.
But is this something in domestic house cats that has been amplified?
Well, the idea of interacting with humans can amplify it. It can actually also dampen it. It just depends on who they're interacting with and why. Because the idea of humanity being connected to many different kinds of things, the cats can utilize a relationship with humans to magnify and amplify a reason for seeing particular elementals or particular spirits that might be relevant for the particular human that they're, as you say, hanging out with.
Which leads to the next question about zoo animals who are changed because they interact with humans and they deeply interact with human consciousness.
They can. They don't have to, but they can.
And they're in a situation where they're actually cared for very strongly. You know, there's a lot of concern about their well-being, enrichment, and all of these things. So how are we changing animal species and their abilities, I guess, psychically, by developing almost new species that have these kinds of experiences?
Well, again, like anything, it's a reflection of the evolution within your own consciousness. So you will form relationships or generate species that are more reflective of the level of consciousness that you're operating from.
So it's very interesting to watch them change, and the idea that animals can be friends with animals that heretofore would have been enemies.
Yes. It is to some degree not only a reflection of what we just said about the shifts in collective consciousness on your planet, but it is also to some degree the precursors of what we experience in our world about all animals being symbiotic instead of predatory.
So we're just seeing the early signs of that now.
Yes. Very early.
And our consciousness evolves.
Correct. And you become less predatory and more symbiotic as well.
Right. Do you have any suggestions for making extracts from crystals?
At this time, no.
Okay. Let's see. As far as individuals having challenges with finding time to follow their excitement, and especially if they have children.
It's about being creative and imaginative to make the time, not find it, by understanding how to follow, at least to some degree, the formula. Again, synchronicity being the organizing principle, they will begin to allow synchronicity to organize their lives and everyone in their lives in a manner that serves everyone best, synchronistically, thus creating the time needed in order to continue to and expand upon the actions of your passion. So you have to start somewhere. As long as you are willing to start somewhere and know that it can expand and be willing to allow it to expand without putting a condition on it that you are afraid it will expand too far and then you won't have time to do this or do that is important to you or needs to be done, is a complete contradiction of understanding how synchronicity works. So the idea is to at least act on your passion to the degree you can in the present situation and allow synchronicity as the organizing principle to bring you a more efficient way of doing with your imagination what it is that truly needs to be done, and allow you to also realize that there are different ways to do things that will afford you more time, and that there may be things you don't actually need to do when you're operating more efficiently. And therefore the time again will appear to allow you to continue to move forward. This is one of the side effects of acting on your passion, is that the synchronicity connected to it actually brings you more opportunities to act on your passion and brings with it all of the coordination necessary for everyone that's important to be in your life, so that all fits in perfect timing. So it's not an issue of finding time, it's an issue of allowing perfect timing to work the way synchronicity will automatically manifest it for you.
And it also seems like when you're doing something that's your passion, like having a child and raising them,
Yes.
that even though there may be tasks involved in that process
Yes.
that you find quote unquote unpleasant or whatever, if you
Yes.
always frame it as being part of your passion of raising a child,
then you will find ways to do what is absolutely necessary in the most pleasurable way. And you will let go of those things or realize that there may be certain things that either can be done very differently or are wholly unnecessary to do. Again, remember, you have to look at this as a whole system. Being in your passion, by definition, brings with it the ways in which the things that need to be done can be done that are reflective of your passion. You don't have to assume that in your passion there will be tasks that will be unpleasant, because that's a totally contradictory idea of the state of being of passion. The state of passion wouldn't contain things that need to be done in an unpleasant way. That's not a definition of the state of passion. So being in your passion will bring you, if you're willing to allow it, the inspiration, imagination, and insight and synchronistic opportunities to allow you to do the things that truly need to be done that are reflective of your passion, including the raising of children, if that is your passion, having the family that is your passion, interacting with them in a way that is reflective of the passion of every single member in the family, working together automatically, synchronistically, because you're in that state of being together, and nothing is left out that's important. You have to understand how this works holistically, and not try to piece it together like it's a collection of disconnected parts. It's not. It's one system.
We have a phrase here that if you love someone, then you should let him or her be free.
Yes.
Can you share some more about that idea and what that really means in terms of vibrational level?
Well, again, it's not imposing assumptions of structures on relationships that may not be what the relationship is about. So it's about letting go of all of these different assumptions that just because there may be a particular strong attraction, putting an imposition upon it or a supposition upon it about what that attraction is supposed to mean and how the relationship is supposed to play out just because of the strength of the attraction, is a complete misunderstanding of the principle of the formula of not having any assumptions or insistence on the way your reality unfolds. So the idea of quote unquote let them be free is the way to truly express the unconditional love that will allow the relationship to show you what it actually needs to be instead of what you've been taught to think it should be. And then you will have what you need to get out of that relationship by not assuming and misunderstanding what it is, letting it show you what it is, and getting what you need out of it, instead of being disappointed because what you thought you needed or wanted didn't happen, because that wasn't necessarily the purpose of that particular relationship.
So many people have challenges with that regarding romantic relationships.
Yes.
And so the idea that we go through a phase, let's say, of having a deep investment in romantic relationships and needing them to be the way we want them to be and our partner to be a certain way and all of that.
Yes.
What is the basis for the dysfunction aspect of that?
Well, fear of abandonment, fear of being unworthy, those kinds of things are the base frequencies of these kinds of behaviors. Again, the idea is that if that's what you're imposing upon the idea of a relationship, then you're actually not in the real relationship anyway, and you've created a self-fulfilling prophecy of, in a sense, being alone, even while you're in a relationship, because you don't know who you're actually in a relationship with, and they don't know who they're really in a relationship with, because you're not being your true self and not showing them who you really are so they can make the choice to be in the relationship that serves them or not. So the idea, again, is it comes from a fear of disconnection, being taught that you are disconnected, being taught that you are not self-empowered, being taught that you need others to complete you. So when you let all that go, the idea of relationships play out wonderfully, joyfully, lovingly, even romantically, in their own natural way, according to what is germane for that relationship. Remember, there are many kinds of romance, so to speak. And so the idea of the way you impose the concept of what romance should look like very often isn't exactly a true romance.
So how do hormones play into this? Because it seems like the more intensely human beings are experiencing their hormonal aspects, the more focused they are on these ideas and their
Yes,
insistences.
because hormones reinforce the belief that created them. Remember, every belief system, positive or negative, is going to create in your physical body a chemical reflection of the belief, and that includes hormones. So if it's a fear-based belief, it's going to include the idea of a chemical composition of your hormones and many other chemical substances in the body that will reinforce what you have bought into with regard to that belief. And again, that's why when you finally let them go, you often cry them out in your tears, because letting go of a fear-based belief also requires you letting go of the chemical component, which more often than not washes out through your tears.
So as a species, as we evolve, will our hormonal levels change to
Absolutely.
reflect that? And
Absolutely.
so, or do we have heightened levels of hormones now and perhaps historically when we've had lots of wars and a
Yes.
very patriarchal kind of environment?
How can you not? Again, remember, physical reality is a reflection on every possible level of the state of your consciousness, which is determined by your belief systems in physical reality. So everything is going to adjust itself according to those belief systems to give you a reflection in physical terms. Everything. Nothing is left out.
So using hormones as an excuse really is no excuse, because that will change as you shift your consciousness. Is it mind over biology in a sense?
All you're saying when you use hormones as an excuse is you're saying that you acknowledge that you have bought into a belief system that has generated these particular chemical structures in your body in order to reinforce itself. So you're admitting that there is a reinforcement factor that you find challenging, but nevertheless, if you understand the mechanics of what we've just described, it can't necessarily be used as an excuse to keep doing it, because the idea of recognizing that you have the chemical hormone that reflects the belief should put you in touch with the fact that you have the belief. And therefore, if you're in touch with the fact that you have the belief, you can change it, because you know that the belief generated the hormone in exactly the same way that you know that a belief generates an emotion or a thought or a behavior. So just use the hormones in the way that you would use the emotion and trace it back and say, what would I have to believe is true in order to have these chemical components in my body to reinforce this fear-based belief? Just the way you would say, what would I have to believe is true in order to feel or think or behave or experience what I am feeling, thinking, behaving, experiencing? You can use the same technique with hormones as well, because it's all a reflection of beliefs.
Is that part of what the Greys did? They tried to eliminate the hormonal aspect of their expression?
Well,
They
yes, they had to eliminate the idea of the reinforcement of any particular kind of emotional belief or anything like that because of the work they knew they needed to do and how they needed to focus on it in order to accomplish it. So there would be absolutely no distractions whatsoever, because the idea of the hybridization agenda was very complex, and they knew it would take a long time, and they knew that if they didn't become, in a sense, an emotionless hive mind, they would never accomplish the task.
So they did the shortcut. Instead of changing their belief system, they literally
divested themselves of the belief system in order to become a hive mentality that would then be overseen by those that they had put in charge to oversee, which is the mantis beings.
Okay, and will we see changes as we evolve and ascend in our general theme of exploration, going from the transforming darkness into light? Yes. To some other kind of theme as a society?
Absolutely. Again, whatever you're the vibration of determines what you experience. And the simplest way to express that is what we have said before, is that even when you let go finally of all fear-based beliefs, you can still continue to evolve and refine yourself by now determining that you can let go of things that are simply not relevant for you, even if they're not fear-based beliefs.
Okay.
That's one example of that idea.
And then lastly, there was a question about technology and sophistication of things like dating apps and other matchmaking services, and how will our experience of dating change in the future if we evolve? We will evolve more, so we balance out our hormones and we're not so driven by that.
Yes.
And perhaps,
well, it will be something more similar to what we experience on our planet, because we operate, as we have said, on pure synchronism. You'll meet exactly who you need to meet when you need to meet them. Period. That's dating.
And you won't put on them a insistence that they be someone other than who they truly are. It's much more free-flowing.
Because you will finally be honest with yourselves that you have no clue yet as to who they actually are and why they're in your life. You will allow that to unfold and show you who they are and why they're there, and you will take it moment by moment by living more in the present instead of assuming an entire future that has to unfold because you've met someone. So, does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
So then at this time, please allow yourselves to move forward in relaxation in order to enjoy the unfolding of the meditation about to be delivered.